Hi, I'm Randy Couple Saban. This is part 3 of my story, my testimony, and I left off where I had left the ministry and was home at my parents' house, going back to school, and that's when this occurred. That my sister came out and she revealed to me that she had been sexually abused by my father. She had packed up a U-Haul trailer and she was on her way to go help this girl that lived, I think, in Indiana. And this girl happened to be in a satanic sex cult, like a family cult, and she wanted to go and save her and take her from this environment. And that's when she told me. And leaving with all that in my hands to deal with, my sister was out of touch for about a year, probably until she ran out of money. That was before the cell phones, and so there was really no communication. We were just waiting for her to call to check up, to let us know that she was fine. I had moved out within a couple of months, got my own apartment in Beaumont, and just was trying to understand and deal with this information and this problem that had come out, the secret, the dirty secret that came out in my family. So I just, this period of time of 1 year, I just was going to school and working, and that was it. I was too far away to go to that church that was in Houston, and I was working at a local place doing work where we were teaching, educating people in the community. It's called what was the name of the organization? Can't remember. The something triangle, because the name of our Tri-Cities in southeast Texas was the Golden Triangle. So it was a name similar to that. I can't remember right now. But I did education, did HIV testing, and that's basically what I was doing for about a year. Waiting, basically I was waiting for my sister to come, to basically call to find out what was going on. When she did finally reach out, I had her come live with me. We moved to Florida, and just things kind of was settling and getting better for her. And she eventually got, some level of, I'm sure it wasn't necessarily healing, but she got some support, and she was doing what she needed to do for herself. And I was just there supporting her and seeing that she was well. She joined the military, and at that time, about that same time, the job that I was working at in Jacksonville, Florida. At the time, my ex-wife had remarried to this this guy that used to work with me in the Navy, and they were stationed in St. Mary's, and so I was working in Jacksonville. So I got to see the children and building, had visitation every weekend or every other weekend, and I was just trying to build my life. During that time, the children were obviously growing up, and they were growing up basically without me. They did have we did have visitation, but at that time my mindset was I didn't see I didn't see a long-term future for me. So Joy having a husband, although I didn't like it, and my youngest daughter, Genevieve, really didn't know me as her father. She only knew Roger as her father and called her daddy. And that was difficult, but understandable. So I had an opportunity to relocate to New York, to Long Beach, no, not Long Beach, Long Island, and I was managing a branch out there. And so I took that opportunity to do that because I really didn't have any other future for myself. It was a management position, so it was something I felt like I was going to be good at, and so I did that. That caused me to be further away from the children. But I think, in hindsight, when I look at it, I was grasping out what was left of what I felt was left of my life, and trying to find some type of level of success and happiness. And I didn't want to be a burden on the children or have the children see me in a bad state. So it was a combination of wanting to be happy, wanted something for myself, and also didn't know what was going to happen with my health. I felt that the children were fine. They were fine now. Later found out that wasn't true, but that's what I thought at the time. So, okay, now I'm here in New York and I'm working, and so now I'm focusing on my life. I'm getting, really going out, trying to meet friends, trying to find somebody to date, it's in the New York. I was out in Long Island, but in Manhattan was the place to really go. So I always had this draw or wanting to be in Manhattan. I met this guy, and he was married at the time, and I thought I fell in love. I fell in love with him. I thought it was love. I was really drawn to him, and he ended up deciding to leave his wife, and he wanted to move to Manhattan, and so we got serious, and my job ended in Long Island, so I had to look for work. So I started looking for work in Manhattan. So this started a new way for me, a new type of life, where it was just, I was seeking out fun, having a good time, and I met somebody who I thought was everything I was looking for, and we moved in together in an apartment. His first name is Scott, and we lived together in Manhattan. And during that time, I lost weight. I worked out. I worked on my outer shell, my body. I was not only handsome, I was cute. I was the image that I wanted for myself. I wanted to be beautiful, and this period of time, I'd say I was physically the most beautiful at the time. Physically, being young, I was in my early 30s. But at this time I was probably 35, 34, 35, 36. I was 36, so I was about 36. So this time frame when I moved to New York was 1999, and I remember the change for year 2000. So that was supposed to be a big deal, that they thought that the clocks, certain computers wouldn't work, and so I distinctly remember that, and so I was living in Manhattan in 2000 and also 2001, and it just was. It was everything that normally people would expect and what they wanted. For me, I was with Scott, and we just basically went out all the time to the clubs. I was getting, getting high on party drugs like ecstasy and some crystal meth, what they called it, Tina, and from time to time there was this other party drug called K, and it just got worse. And for me, it was a combination of the attention I got, and the sex. The two and two went together, along with the use of party drugs. And I call them party drugs because that's how I came about to it. It was to have a different experience while you're dancing in the club, but then it carried over into the bedroom, carried over. Our relationship got more and more carnal, whatever, more and more sexual, multiple partners. It just was completely not anything I'm proud of at all. And I look back at it, and everything I was doing was leading to my death. As far as I was, I later come to the realization that in my desire to find love and happiness, it was leading me to places of darkness and loneliness, even though I was around people. Eventually, then 9/11 hit. This is about the time of 9/11, and I actually worked down Lower Manhattan when it happened. I got my first accounting job. Now I'm a financial controller for a construction company here in Florida. But at the time, this was my first accounting job. Well, I think my first accounting job was when I was working His Touch Ministries. One of the things I did was set up their accounting system. I didn't know anything about accounting, and I looked it up. I figured it out, and got the chart of accounts, and just researched everything I needed to know to get them into accounting system for the nonprofit organization. And so that really was the beginning. But my first job in Manhattan was was as a collector, just basically a bill collector. And I worked for us in the construction industry, and that's where I got my first foot into my career. And so I was down there in Lower Manhattan when 9/11 hit, and it's something it's probably another video that I'll have to go back to another time. But it was surreal to see the buildings on fire from my office building, and then to masses of people just walking home. At this time, at this time I hadn't met Gilles. I met Gilles in 2007, so this is 2001. I had broken up with Scott, and as we left the buildings, I went to my apartment where I was at the time, and it's just something I'll never forget. I have images of all the people walking over the Brooklyn Bridge, covering my face with a shirt or something to try to keep the dust keep me from breathing dust. And I had to walk all the way from Lower Manhattan to Midtown, where I lived on the west side of Midtown. It was called Hell's Kitchen. And yeah, it was weird. So after leaving the relationship with Scott, I was spiraling down even more. And so it just, I would say before 9/11, after we split up, so I'd say we split up, I think we probably split up around February, March of 2001. I think that's 2001, and then there was September 11th, and between that time, as I was trying to understand what was happening, because I was in this relationship that I did want to end, but it ended, and I was by myself, and I just was going out by myself. It was people that were my friends were no longer my friends, because Scott was the one that had all the money, and he had all the party favors, and in fact all the friends that he had at that time were friends that I brought to him that were my friends at first. So I got to it was a learning lesson for me, that they weren't friends. They weren't people that cared about me. And so I remember on the way home back to my apartment, I was on the subway, and it was late at night. It was after midnight. It's between leaving a club, because I used to go to clubs and stay there till about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes on Sunday, and then Monday go to work. But on the way home, I just was in the subway train by myself, and dealing with the fact that I was alone, that I didn't feel loved, and I just remember just laying down in fetal position, and the subway train and just crying and just crying out to God. I just was crying out to God. I said, like, this why why don't I have somebody that loves me? God, please send me somebody that can love me, that will love me. And it was deep. The first time I had this type of cry. I've had it before since then, but this was probably the first time. It was a deep groan from deep within my belly. A cry that I never heard before. And since then I understand that type of cry. It's a groaning deep within of total surrender, total giving up, total yearning, and it was, I know it was completely sincere, and I was really asking God for help. And so I had left New York. It just wasn't working, and then on top of that, another catastrophe happens in the family, and I find out from Joy that her second husband had molested Megan. So I didn't say this in the first video. I don't know why I didn't, but now as I'm speaking this, there's this pattern, and I know that there's this pattern. I spoke to this to Gilles often, that there's a pattern in my life of people that I care about, that are in my family, that I'm close to, being affected by incest or sexual abuse. Joy, my first wife, was, and it was incest by her father, and then my sister, and now it was my own daughter. I didn't know how to process any of this, other than I had to just get out of Manhattan. I was only there for a few years, 2 years, and I needed to get out, and I needed to try to be there for Megan. The weird thing is how this all happened is I ended up staying at Joy's house. She had separated from Roger, and actually they had separated, and then the news came out after they were separated is what I think really happened. And because I was able to go there and stay with her and the family in one of the children's bedrooms for a couple of months while I was trying to relocate and settle and find my own place. That was quite weird, but in the beginning it worked out okay. But all those hard feelings that Joy had for me. She hadn't gone through them properly, and they had to come out eventually, and they did. So we got in a big fight a couple of months later, and I end up I was able to get an apartment, and I moved out. A couple of months after that, she ended up moving the children to Texas. So they went from Georgia. They were living in Georgia, St. Mary's, Georgia, which is basically right across the border of Florida, right near Jacksonville. And they picked up and they went there. So I made this transition to come all the way down from New York. I wanted to get out of there at the time, and I came to try to be a father for, and for the children, be more around the children, and then be supportive and try to help Joy with whatever charges that were being brought against Roger. And they end up going to Texas. So I was left alone again. I wasn't going to follow them to Texas, I'm going to follow them everywhere. And at that time, I still had the same thoughts that, this was, how much longer do I have? How much longer do I have? One of the things that had happened during that time, and I didn't talk about him, but this is probably a good time to talk to you about him, and that is Rod. Rod was one of the guys that we helped in His Touch Ministries. He found himself homeless in Houston. He had got positive HIV, and he needed help with housing, and so he got himself services, and he was referred to our transitional housing, and that's where I met him, and we became friends. He was in the choir with us, with me and my other friend Ro, and he hung out with us from time to time. I would say at the time it was a strong friendship, but there wasn't, it was the beginning of a little friendship at that time. But he had decided that he's a really good singer, and he was a songwriter, and he decided he was going to make a career in Manhattan. So he picked up and left his Touch Ministries where he was living, and decided to go to Manhattan, go to New York, and be a singer songwriter. And he did pretty good. He was able to get a lot of things done, and so that's. I found out that he was in Manhattan, and so I wanted to go back to Manhattan, and work at the same job I was working at. In fact, they gave me an opportunity to come back, but before that occurred, I was staying with my sister. She had a place that her and her husband, she had been married. She got married at this time. She met somebody in the Navy, and she was married, and she had her first son, and she had her son, and so her life was getting pretty much together at that point. And so I stayed at their place transitionary before I went back to New York, so I could find a place and I could get my job back where I was working. So the same job that I had left, because I had moved up to working in a construction company in accounting, and they said I could come back anytime. They knew why I left. I left because of a family emergency, and they said come back whenever you want. So I found myself going back there again, the place that I left. And this was in 2005. I'd say 2004, 2005. And so I went right back in the same thing as before. Going out by myself, having more sexual relationships, not relationships, sexual encounters. It was bad. I say it was bad. And that is the part of my life that was the darkest. I don't know how I'm alive. There were times that just the whole idea. New York is unsafe to begin with. It's really bad now, but back then, meeting somebody that you don't know, not knowing anything, they could rob you, they could not only hurt you, you could get killed, and I did that multiple times, put myself in the situation where literally my life was in everybody's hands, and there was no regards for my own well-being, and all I wanted to do was be in the club because I felt free and I felt happy. The only time I felt happy was dancing in the clubs, the music and having the ecstasy giving me the feeling of euphoria. I felt peace. I felt a connection to the universe. It was, but that environment was toxic. It was very bad. So I ended up, it was getting worse and worse. And I wouldn't say it's physical addictions or anything like that, but it certainly was an emotional, mental need, addiction or need, and I was killing myself. And whether I was realizing it at the time when I was doing that, there eventually was a point when I realized that I was killing myself, and that occurred when I was in one of the bars by myself. No, in fact, I think Rod was with me, and there was some drugs, some pills or something that I bought from a drug dealer, and they weren't good. It wasn't good. And so thought they were fake. So I confronted the drug dealer, and he knocked me out cold. I fell to the floor, busted my lip. So this scar you see is a result of me, where he hit me and busted my lip, and I was bleeding. I was knocked out. So I literally was choking on my blood, and if it wasn't for the security guard, I could have died right there. And I woke up in the ambulance, and I was very emotional in that ambulance, I remember. I knew I could have died. So that shook me up. And had issues with anger also. You know, when I get out of work, and in Manhattan, you cross intersections, and there's taxi drivers, and they're aggressive, and so there was a taxi driver that had driven halfway into the crosswalk, and it angered me. And I recall getting on top of the taxi cab, jumping on it, jumping down real hard, and putting a dent on the hood of his car, and got down and just walked away, and was very happy, extremely happy. Didn't think anything was wrong with that at the time. I got in a fight with my ex-wife Joy over the phone, and it was over money, and it was over me not being a good father, and remember just screaming on the phone with her, and just hanging up, and then afterwards, you know, I had wishful thinking that, you know, I just wish she was gone. I wish she was dead. You know, what would life be like if Joy wasn't here? And I got this instant feeling of happiness and serenity, and immediately realized that I knew something was wrong with me. I had really gone to the deep end. Anger, and so I got counseling, and I started going to counseling. I was going like twice a week, every week for 2 years, and that was like in 2005. And because, you know, I thought I was just angry at Joy, and I guess I was, but the anger wasn't so much her. I mean, there was anger there, and I'm not diminishing it, but there was other angers. There's other things that was causing me to live this way and have this anger. Obviously, the most obvious thing, I'm telling you this video, obvious, I was angry because I had HIV and I was gonna die, obviously. But there was other angers. Anger at my mother. That's really the source of the anger I had. And she was a nice woman, but she wasn't motherly in the ways I needed a mother. She didn't react at all to the news that her husband molested my sister, and later, as I spoke to my sister over the years, I come to realize through her that he molested my brother, and that's why he acted the way he acted. And in certain grooming techniques that he used, and I do remember them now as a child. I don't think I was molested by him, but there were grooming exercises that I do remember. One of them is putting a quarter in his boots, and he would have us take his boots off to get the quarter. And then we would do that for a while, and then we would get used to doing that for the quarter, and then he would put the quarter somewhere else, and you can imagine where that was. That I do remember. And so yeah, I had a lot of anger and self-pity, and I was choosing things in my life that was causing me to die, leading to my death, leading to my death. And so the first step, the first thing was me calling out for God. But the things that happened in my life continued. So the next step, it took me doing some level of action, and that action was getting counseling. Once I got counseling and I dealt with all that, I no longer was going out to the clubs. I wasn't interested in using drugs, party drugs like before. I still drank, but it wasn't like getting crazy drunk. It was just normal social drinking. And that's when I met Gilles. I had just finished my 2 years of counseling, and I went home. Megan had her first daughter, and I had went home. And when I came back, I met Gilles, and I had met him, and then I went away. But that was we started. I met Gilles in January of 2007, and we've been together ever since. And our life has been crazy, been wonderful. It's been ups and downs. It's been real, a real relationship, a real genuine. Everything that you can say anything you want. Everything is said, nothing's held back. And so we started living for each other, and we moved all over the place. Eventually we ended up here in Florida, and here in Fort Lauderdale is basically where we've been for the past we got here in 2010. So from 2010, yes, we've gone other places and temporarily lived other places, but we've basically been here since 2010, and that we've called our home. And it wasn't easy all the time. Everything was starting off like any normal relationship in the beginning. It's funny because when he first met me in New York, he didn't want to have a boyfriend. He didn't want to have a relationship. He was going to move back to France, and he just kept on seeing me, and it grew from there. We immediately trusted each other, and so I've been with Gilles since 2007, so it's been 16 years. It'll be it's been a long time. It's been like I said, up and down. but wonderful. We've traveled all over the world, and he brought me things that I've never would have experienced without him. But oh yeah, and also he was a practicing Buddhist, so he chanted. I started chanting with him, and I later found out for me it wasn't something. I after I got closer to God, I didn't feel the need to chant in the same way before. But like I said at the beginning, it's like any other relationship. We traveled. We had a wonderful time together. We still have a wonderful time together. But within, I'd say within maybe 2 years, 3 years into the relationship, we stopped having sex, and normally that would be something that in most couples that would be the end of it, but it wasn't for us. I mean, the love we have for each other is very deep, very real. And I found myself just, in the beginning, no, it was difficult. We tried other ways of trying to make it work. But there was a point where a decision was made by me, and I had full authority, full permission to do whatever I wanted. And I did. But there was a point where I made a decision that, I know this is hurting him, whether he's saying it's not. And it's hurting me, because it's not what I want. So I stopped. I stopped any type of extracurricular sexual activity outside of our marriage, our relationship. We weren't married at the time. We got married in 2015, when it became legal to marry. But we've been living as though we've been married from the very beginning. So the relationship I have with Gilles is a lifesaver. It has been a lifesaver, and I can look through this whole process, and where I am today, that it's been to my benefit. It's been to my benefit. I can speak for Gilles in the way he feels about things. I know that his love for me is just as strong as it was in the beginning, probably more so. That I do know, but for me, because of my life, because of my experiences, that has his love, and the fact that we're not having sex has saved me. Really has saved me, because it broke. If there was an addiction, if there was any type of, I wouldn't say it was a sexual addiction, but if there was any hold on to me, anything that was holding me back in any spiritual growth or any growth in general as a person, it would be sex. Because sex is the thing that caused problems in my early marriage. Sex is a problem that gave me HIV. Sex is a problem throughout other relationships. And then sex became a problem when I was just aimlessly having sex with people I didn't know. So I was killing myself. I was killing myself with sex. And I can honestly say that's how I look at it. And so being actually free from that, not by my choice, but it was put on me, and eventually accepted it as something very positive in my life. I'm very happy about this whole situation. There's like a cleansing of who I am, because the real me is this, and I was using sex to get love, and I don't need to get love from Jill in that way. I don't need sex to get love anymore. I have real genuine love, and that's what I always wanted. So I'm certain that God answered my prayer and my cry to have somebody to come in my life who loves me, and there's a reason for Gilles to be in my life. There's a reason for it. There's a reason for me being in his life. And we're starting to discover more and more as we get older. And so today I'm very happy, very successful in my career. I'm very blessed. And God has given me favor, has shown me favor. I don't know why. So undeserving. I had a time where I was spending a lot of time in God's presence, and God in the ministry, and I walked away from it. I walked away from it. Yet He still found a way to keep me and protect me. There's no doubt that I'm alive because of God's hand on my life, His protections, His angels, not letting me go too far, and now, you know, he said, enough is enough. I need more of you. I want to be closer to you. And I got one more video, my last part 4, and it's going to talk about this past year. Because I always believed in God, always believed God, I always believed that I was saved. I wasn't living there was time the word is backslidden, or I walked away from church responsibilities of the church, but in my heart I always still believed in God. I still had a desire for His love. So this next video, I'm going to talk about this past year and how God really said, and these words are clear for me. This is basically, I've waited enough for you, and I want more of your attention, there's something more for you, and I don't know what it is, but I'm going to take the time in the next video to tell you what has gone on in my life in the past year, and how it's affected Gilles. And it was initially not easy for him. It's a shock. But it's right where I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. So thank you for taking the time to listen to this third video, and I hope you take the time to listen to the last one, because the last one for me is the most important.